Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Caesar, and I manage marketing and communications at Synergy Technical, and I have the honor of moderating this session and introducing today's speaker. Today's webinar is actually very special to Adrian and I, having attended Microsoft Ignite in person a couple times in the past. It was like our favorite conference, but today we'll be covering basically every juicy detail that came out of Microsoft Ignite 2022. If you can't tell by Adrian's face, it was a lot of great stuff.
We're going to cover as much as we can get through in an hour.
Yeah, in an hour. It was like, I think it was like 10 hours and it was 4. We got it to an hour. But so I'll be quick because I know we have so much to cover, but just a little bit about us. Synergy Technical is an IT consulting firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients in over 70 countries in all 50 states and manage over 3 million licenses of Microsoft 365 through our licensing and managed services practice. Oh, I got so excited for a second. I took it.
Yeah, it's all right.
We've been gunning for this. Yeah. But yeah, so now to introduce our amazing presenter, I'll slow down a bit, Adrian Amos. Adrian is one of our top solution architects with specializations in both productivity and security. He's had the honor of running many productivity and security immersion experiences at Ignite actually in the past, as well as leading work sessions all over the world. Recently, you can find him all over our social media and your web content, sometimes even on a bike, if you can get him off a bike.
You're going to see that in here.
See?
Yeah.
I knew it. And with that raving introduction, and I apologize for my you can tell we're excited. I'm gonna hand things over to Adrian and we can get things
on. All right. Thank you. So thank you, Christina. I really always appreciate it. There was a lot, right? And it would be foolish to believe that we could boil the ocean in an hour. We're going to be lucky to raise the temperature by 1 degree Celsius. There was so much, in fact, that Microsoft broke down the entire conference over 5 major tracks. And when I began putting together the content to deliver for this event, I tried to organize in their 5 tracks, and there's just so much. It was so broad. We really would have been going down way too many rabbit holes and just wildly off course. So what I thought I would do is I'd break it down to some categories that made sense for me in terms of how they organize things. There was a lot of discussion around AI, massive advancements in AI, both in the cloud and at the endpoint, and sometimes in some cases, things that unified the cloud and the endpoint, or at least we seem to be moving this in that direction. The first one, and I'm running my slide in reverse order, so I apologize for that, was neural processing. And Windows 11 22H2 was a big focus, right? It obviously came out shortly before Ignite, right?
Yeah.
But one of the big things that we saw there was the introduction, and it was just quietly introduced before Ignite, of neural accelerators, or AI accelerators, neural processing units. NPUs take on the advanced computations necessary to do things that seem like simple magic, like Teams background blur. That's an AI functionality. But the core performance of that used to live on the CPU and the GPU and memory, right? So a neural processing unit takes those computations and moves them onto a totally different device, totally different component or chipset, right? And my apologies in advance, a lot of this is scripted, and I would much rather live and die by the live demo, but I don't have things to demo for a lot of this, so a lot of this is going to be off the screen. So my apologies back and forth on the eyes here. Anyway, so what that's going to enable first and foremost is the devices that have an NPU will have slightly different settings available to them than devices that don't. So I have verified, for instance, that these settings in my Bluetooth devices and camera settings app do not exist, right? I can't do standard blur versus background blur as a chipset level function, right? I can't even do the eye contact that's listed at the bottom of the screen, like having it actually be able to track your eyes and see where you are. So a really cool demonstration of what this capability allows was done in the day 2 opening session when Pane brought an engineer and a guitarist on stage to demonstrate some of the capabilities that exist in the NPU.
I saw that.
Device.
Wait,
yes.
I saw that.
This was honestly, cool. This was like one of the show-stopping moments of the entire thing. So when Panos and the engineer, and I apologize for not getting his name, I ran out of time to research it. When they were both in front of the computer, which incidentally, we'll get to the computer itself in a bit, when they were both in front of it, it would zoom out to capture both of them, right? And when Panos stepped out of frame, it zoomed in to capture his face, and they could have it track his eye movement so that he always appeared to be central.
Yeah.
And I've actually seen in several teams meetings where when somebody kind of leans back and forth to adjust, you can sort of watch the camera slow track back and forth. So this isn't actually a fundamentally new capability, but what it's doing is it's taking it out of the Teams processing and putting it into the NPU as a processor. So then things got really super cool because then they had the guitarist play music on stage with the voice focus capability enabled, right? Yeah, and what was really neat was even when we were talking about this after the event, what was missed was that this wasn't a function of Teams. This was a function of the NPU, the neural processing unit. So they had him play the guitar while they were talking, and then they went back and played the music or played the clip again, and it completely isolated him. And then they had the audience like, making all kinds of wild noises.
It was really cool.
And they were, my favorite part was that they were so, they were testing live, right? They said, the guy said, like, literally, we've never done anything like this before. And you can hear the panic in his voice as he's like, I don't know if this is going to work. And they actually had some salty language that they captured very clearly because of the voice focus.
No, it was really cool.
So, and as I mentioned, like, again, these aren't fundamentally new capabilities for our productivity workloads, but taking them out of the device or out of the CPU and the GPU, right? Because you can see on the screen here, we're showing that while this is happening, the CPU, GPU, memory, and disk are all basically flatlined.
Yeah.
So all of this is happening in an additional chipset, which means that we're going to enable much more powerful experiences across communication platforms. So Teams will be a really great venue for this, where we'll be able to do much better isolation of background noises for attendees, much more clear, concise tracking of who's speaking and when, and attributions. And we'll get into a little bit more of how this is going to impact Teams down the road.
I feel like Teams already has really great noise cancellation. Like I've had issues, I feel like.
Yeah, okay.
But so now I'm really curious to see how this just even.
And one of the things we tried to figure out how to film for a while, and some people got better at it than others, is you could take a physical whiteboard in the background of your room and map it to a whiteboard app in Teams, right? Well, or map it to a whiteboard in Teams. If you did that with a device that didn't have an NPU, you could watch the processor jump to like 80%, right? So even just trying to like do a recording of capturing a whiteboard would be so taxing the computer couldn't handle it. That now is offloaded. So get back to doing the thing you bought the computer to do in the first place, which is pretty exciting, right? So the device in question that they were using, and actually I saw a bunch of these being used for the event, was the brand new Surface Pro 9 with 5G. This device is available for pre-order along with a whole bunch of other Surface devices, but interestingly, the one that does this, the one that has the NPU, appears to be a partially Microsoft-developed processor. It is the SQ3. It's the furthering of the SQ family that is actually built on a different chipset. It's not Intel, it's not AMD. I believe it's ARM, but it's a totally separate thing, but it has the NPU capabilities built into it. And as I mentioned, the entire Surface lineup got introductions of new devices, and they all are introducing that same capability. So Microsoft is leaning hard into this AI at the endpoint as a big part of what we expect in the future. All right, so at the device, that's one thing. Now we got AI in the actual Microsoft 365 space too, and this guy caught probably the lion's share of the attention at this year's event. So originally dubbed SharePoint Syntex, because it predominantly operates within SharePoint Online, Microsoft Syntex now is a service that allows you to create and leverage data models to extract content from multiple sources into streamlined views with summarization, translation, and automatic annotations. And the demos of this are actually really amazing, but what I couldn't help notice is that the modeling process looks a heck of a lot like what Jeff Lau presented in last month's AI Builder webinar.
The AI Builder.
And so he did a fantastic demo and really detailed overview of how to actually use AI Builder to generate a lot of this stuff. So instead of me boiling the ocean, I highly recommend go back and watch his webinar. When I'm
going to drop that in the chat right now.
When we post this live on YouTube, up over Christina's head, we'll have a link to Jeff's recording for that. And it'll
just look above.
Make it so much easier than me oversimplifying it and getting it entirely wrong. But what Syntex is going to do is it's going to take the results of those models and deliver contextualized information, and that we can then take and take that enhanced content and automatically generate downstream content, right? So we can take the content that comes from one document or multiple documents and produce an additional document out of it, right? That feeds into templates, right? So you could take like multiple proposals from multiple templates, extract the key values into a meaningful list, and then execute responses or even e-signature requests that pull directly from the source into predefined templates. And then you can manage that content through its entire life cycle. And this is sort of interesting, right? So there was a Microsoft Mechanics just this morning published a YouTube short that focused on this, but I didn't see a lot of coverage on the side note that the Syntex features or product suite services were being used as a backup and recovery tool for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Exchange Online mailboxes. And backup and restore has largely been a user-driven activity in the Microsoft Online space, right? In the Office and the Microsoft 365 space, and it's often been viewed by organizations as a bit of a blind spot, right? Because if the user doesn't request their mailbox, then the admin can only do it after XYZ termination and all sorts of other things. And there's been this whole cottage industry of third-party tools that have developed around that blind spot. Well, what this is intended to do is recognize the activities of a ransomware attack, allow you to take action on it, and then either restore in place those libraries that have been impacted, mailboxes, whatever, or actually even now restore to an alternate location. So Syntex is more than just AI on the tools. It's also being developed as a backup and recovery component native to the Microsoft 365 experience. So if it's going to do all those things, it's going to have some licensing complexities, right? So a product that operates within SharePoint comprises 11 subservices and advanced AI modeling and seems to solve for blind spots in Exchange Online and is expressly intended to work with the Power Platform, right, from the AI Builder interface. It does seem like that would be right for some complexities in licensing. And it looks like right now, Syntex can be purchased for $5 a user a month as an add-on in the Microsoft 365 admin portal. So a user does have to currently have a Microsoft 365 license, but the Mechanics video content talks about monitoring costs of it through Azure Cost Analysis. So charging back things to a department level. So it seems that there are some elements that are going to be a little bit more complicated, as I suggested, right? So the licensing document here suggests that there are some functions that don't require a license at all, whereas every license is also going to come with 3,500 AI Builder credits. What is the value of a credit? I don't know yet, right? But those are going to be pooled at the tenant level, just like print jobs and universal print are pooled at the tenant level.
I wonder how you measure AI credit, like what, depending on the job or like the.
Well, I didn't dig down far enough, but you know
that's
what?
a rabbit hole. But
that's a Power Platform thing, and I'm always going to defer to Jeff on that because he is absolutely the expert on that side of things. So a lot of stuff going on with Syntex. There's a lot of stuff around licensing. There's some interesting things around too. Like, so we mentioned the 3,500 credits per license. You can do up to 1 million credits per user per tenant per month. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's built into this. But not going to boil the ocean on Syntex. There was a lot there. I imagine we'll see a lot more coming in the months ahead. The last really interesting thing that we got that I'm going to cover in AI in terms of Microsoft's developments is the introduction of the Microsoft Designer app. And this is a really interesting one for me. So we talked about AI in the M365 toolset, and we talked about AI at the device, but this is actually AI truly in the cloud. This is really leveraging cloud AI. Specifically, it's actually leveraging DALL-E 2. Where if you've seen access to DALL-E, you can type in like random words of things operating together, and it'll produce you some very strange images. This is a refined version of that, but this is really kind of not just a fundamentally different thing in terms of like building funky images. This is a whole new design product that, to my knowledge, Microsoft has never really had a dedicated design product before.
No. If they did, our graphic designer would know because he's.
Well, yeah, right. So we've had Visio, we've had PowerPoint, and various iterations of Paint, right? But this is the first dedicated design solution that I've ever seen out of Microsoft. And whereas in PowerPoint, you could click on the designer menu and get some basic guidance around designing content. You could even insert online art into pictures, right? It was still very much up to you to decide what to start with, what to put on that blank canvas,
Yeah.
right? You can get design ideas.
Mhm.
And while there are absolutely masters of PowerPoint, it's really not something people get excited about using a design tool. And, again, with the way that I'm doing things right now from a
Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation,
Yeah.
this is not my preferred way of
Yeah.
working, right? I want a
Yeah,
live demo.
the number of screens that I'm always looking at, we always joke. I'm like, I don't know where to look. We've got a lot.
Yeah. And so the other thing that really makes this interesting too is that this is also the first time Microsoft has made a direct play for direct publishing from an application directly to external media. So the thought here is that you will take your designs, you will build them, and then you will be able to directly publish to your social media platforms from this.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's you're not, well, do you have the option to save a file?
I'm sure you do. Yeah, you could do it any way you want,
You can
right?
just literally connect it.
Yeah, direct
That would
publishing.
save me a lot of,
which
yeah.
paints a pretty clear target on applications like Canva,
Yeah.
right? Bring all that
Right.
back into the suite. Now you're licensed for something already you may not be taking advantage of. Well, here you go. Here's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So Designer is currently accepting waitlist applicants for private preview. You can go over to the Designer webpage and actually put your name on the list.
Did they say when it was gonna go GA?
No,
Or
it's
like,
private
it's not
preview
even-
right now.
Oh, so yeah, it's not
Yeah.
even public preview. Okay.
Yeah, no, not even public
Might be,
preview
yeah.
yet. All right, so we've talked about the core themes around AI, and AI does trickle into and through almost everything else that was discussed at Ignite this year. But let's talk about now the introductions or the changes that have come to the Microsoft 365 tool set. So the first thing you'll notice is that the name Office is gone. Log on to portal.office.com and you will be greeted with a small notice that the terminology and the icons are changing. And actually, no, because the first thing that you nearly need to notice is the color purple, which seems to have invaded everything.
Teams is taking over everything.
Well, it's, and interestingly, it's actually not even Teams. You remember late last year when Microsoft announced that Pantone had announced that the color Very Perry was the color of the year?
Yes.
Right there on the screen, right?
Oh my
Well, they've
gosh, I
leaned
forgot.
in super duper hard, right? Everything
Yeah.
that's new into the Microsoft 365 space has been influenced by the color of the year Very Perry. So I guess
Very
Teams
Perry.
got in early in 2017 and just owned it.
It's like a
But-
test drive, but it's different. I like this new one though.
I
will
do
say I
too,
do.
right? It's pleasing to the eye.
is.
It's pleasing to the eye.
is.
So Microsoft has been slowly rebranding components of the Office / now Microsoft stack for quite some time. In 2018, they released the app, the Office app, right? There was an evolution even then of the My Office app. What it did was it brought 100% parity between what users would expect to see in Office on the web to an app that was pre-bundled and actually was kind of even included in most like store purchased machines. It was a way for you to get to all the Office components from within a single app, and it would allow you then to branch out and install the Office product. Well, that product, or actually I should say the experience isn't changing, but the logo, the app, and the colors now are. So, but the rebrand itself represents Microsoft's belief that the experience of using the products is now more interconnected than it has ever been before, and that the suite itself has outgrown the Office moniker. We've already discussed the addition of Designer, but we're also getting ClipChamp and Loop, and Teams itself will be growing to support additional capabilities through Teams Premium offering. Now, let's talk a little bit about ClipChamp, because for a long time I didn't want to talk about ClipChamp. I didn't understand quite what it was. Yeah, this even caught some folks by surprise in an internal meeting where they thought I was talking about a training solution that we also use called
Clip Training,
right?
That's what.
Now, so if you've opened the venerable Microsoft Video Editor at any point in the last several months, you've been greeted with the little message on the screen that says, new and improved capabilities are coming with ClipChamp. I started getting these a few months ago, and it was honestly a surprise, though, to see the ClipChamp logo in the Microsoft 365 component logos at Ignite this year. So I wanted to call attention to it because what it seems like they've done is they've risen ClipChamp to a component parity with the rest of the Microsoft 365 stack, even if they're not directly speaking to it at that level. Now, you can go download ClipChamp from the Microsoft Store right now. I had a whole big slide in here about the history of the product. They bought the company in September of last year, but it is not at all the simplified experience
bike.
that video
There
editor
it is.
right? In
There's the
video
bike.
editor, I could bring in a few pieces of media, I could stick them over here and I could put them on the timeline and chop them up. With this, I have all the features that I would have in a commercial product to do video editing, including multi-format, simple export capabilities. There's
That's what we
branding
need
kits, right?
YouTube,
There's
1080p.
yeah, and
We
you
need
can go
that.
straight. And so video editor, you can actually only bring in content you've already created and edit, right? That's why it's called video editor,
yeah.
right? So this is actually taking from creation to edit to finished product. You can actually film directly inside of ClipChamp.
Okay.
Then you can also bring in other things. Then you can do crazy stuff like decoupling audio and video. So you can move things around. You can move, if you have a situation where we've run into where sometimes, a digital mic might not have the same time signatures as a digital camera, right? Now you can separate them and align them, right?
It's
So
always like 2 seconds too. It's like the tiniest little bit. And we're
yeah, so
drives me insane.
built-in transitions, built-in filters, effects, templates, branding kits, simple multi-format export options, and the export process, just like with Designer, allows you to directly publish straight to your social video platforms.
Allows you to directly publish to your video.
Yes. I mean, that's huge, right?
Well,
So-
no, I love these integrations because that's huge for people like in marketing. Like that's
Right.
the biggest because we go through HubSpot now, but it's having to just be able to just seamlessly.
Yeah.
get it
Yeah,
out is
and
amazing.
so honestly, if you do anything with video, this is actually worth taking a look at, right? This really could save you some process and some time down the road. All right. There are also several mentions of Loop, and you may recall it being a big deal when Satya announced at the previous Ignite that Loop would be the first major new product in the Microsoft Productivity Suite since Teams was introduced in March of 2017.
Big statement.
Yes, it was. It was a big statement. And Loop builds on what were already being developed as fluid components, which are reusable live chunks of content that can be edited in real time across multiple interfaces and platforms. So while I'm updating a Loop paragraph inside of, say, a Teams conversation, somebody else can be updating that same paragraph inside of a Word online document. And they can see in real time where I'm editing. So it's just like the Teams co-authoring experience, except it's at a component level. So it could be a spread, it could be a table, it could be an image. You can see on the screen here, right, the things that it can be.
Yeah.
We first saw this start to pop around March of this year in Teams. And recently we got the ability to add Loop components to an email. Well, at Ignite, we finally got the private preview announcement for the actual Loop app. We've been waiting for quite some time for this, and along with that private preview, we got some new feature improvements. Loops will be supported in Whiteboard, which is really cool. I am a huge fan of the Whiteboard app that we can use inside of Teams and meetings. It's fantastic. Loops can be inserted into Word on the web with that product's new context IQ for intelligent tagging. So, just like in an email or a Teams message, you can @ somebody. We're going to have contextual IQ where you can @ and then add loops directly in through that. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. And we also got support for a new type of loop, which you may have noticed on the previous page, where there's a Q&A capability inside of Outlook messages. And we're also going to get the ability to support sensitivity labeling and DLP for loops themselves, which are purportedly going to be generally available by the end of this year. So excited to see that they're bringing the feature parity in for the security side with these loops, because that could be a massive risk for organizations.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
So Teams got more than a few announcements as well. Including a partnership with Cisco for room equipment, and a partnership with Meta to bring immersive meetings to Quest, and a private preview of Mesh avatars, which are the metaverse thing, right? And honestly, I had a whole section in this deck about the industrial metaverse and all that kind of fun stuff, but since we universally roll our eyes still at the concept of
I actually love playing with it. It's so
yeah, but I'm excited about the industrial metaverse, but the consumer metaverse and what this stuff enables, I still think has some ironing out in terms of defining its use case for a lot of folks. Anyway. What caught my ear, though, was the introduction of the new Teams Premium offering, which will leverage AI to bring intelligence to meeting experiences with live translation for captions from 40 spoken languages, intelligent recap to extract key information, automatic note-taking and task assignments out of meetings, and personalized highlights. Now, That may sound a lot like what you just heard me talk about with Syntex, and that is not by accident. This is a very similar set of capabilities that are going to be overlaid into meetings as well to give you more meaningful capabilities. And actually what it's going to be really powerful for too is people who missed the meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Be able to get in, get quick notes, explain what or understand what's been assigned to them, what's come out of it for them as well. So we're also going to get watermarking and sensitivity labels, which are going to come to teams in general, right? So we've seen some previews around that. My old demo tenant, I actually had that working really well. What we don't yet know for sure, though, is if those sensitivity labels are going to be applied specifically only to the meetings or to the teams and channels as well. So we get some granularity on that.
Well, that's a big difference.
It could be, yeah, it very well could be.
Depending on, yeah,
right?
especially if it's extra.
Yeah. There are also going to be some changes coming to the webinar capabilities.
Oh no.
Yeah, so you may see us.
He waited. I did not. Oh, I didn't.
I didn't want to tell her that.
Man.
But hey, actually, so one of the things
bring
that's
in-
been a
right.
longstanding challenge with presenting Teams webinars, and we actually have a very lengthy checklist to try to avoid that challenge today.
No idea.
Is that you can only record the session at 720p. And I said in the last one that we were hoping that we'd solve that problem. Then actually is not a problem you can natively solve with the current version of Teams live events or Teams webinars. That is a fundamental element of how the bot in the cloud that is attending your meeting and recording it is recording it. So we're hoping to see some advancements come along with that.
Well, that actually saved us a lot. So that's a good. I thought you scared me when you were like Teams webinar.
Well, we don't know yet what it means. So, you know,
Oh,
we're,
well then-
yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Anyway, so we also got some other stuff that's going to come to Teams, but not through the premium channel, right? There's going to be a lot of stuff that's coming here too around customizable header images on channels. We've been able to customize the icon for the team itself, right? But now actually going up into the header and being able to define a special image for that. You may notice in this image that's here that the timeline is reversed. That now in this particular channel, the user is creating their post from the top of the list and the timeline now goes backward. So we're expecting to see that come soon. They are also taking pinned posts and putting them over to the side. We're going to have the ability to do some conversation pop-outs and multiple post types. So Teams itself is growing in terms of the way that we're actually able to interact with the content in the channels and Teams. And then we got Microsoft Places. And I'm pretty excited about this one because we do have a pretty robust hybrid work.
We do, yeah.
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 Okay. All right. So, you know, the video they showed for this was the lady showing up to the office and it's dark and she checks her phone and says, we're all working from home today. She rolls her eyes and walks out. Right. And that's real. That happens. This was introduced with, you know, the application doesn't exist yet, but it is being developed. Right. And it has a lot of opportunity for users to indicate where they plan to be working on a given day, you know, whether they're going to be in the office or out. Presence will actually reflect where they are working at any given time. They're going to have the ability to see a virtualized view of their workspaces so they can navigate through, they can get directions to conference rooms, which frankly is 20 freaking years overdue, right?
This reminds me a lot of the hoteling that a lot of hybrid work for, like the hotel workspaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So yeah, insights on and guidance on commuting even and passing time, plus the ability to automatically schedule travel time. Yeah, so I mean, this is really fantastic. I do want to call out though that the data that this application presents back to your workforce will only be as good as the data you put into it. So, you know, this floor plan in this demo here didn't happen by accident. Right, and we've had the ability to map floor plans for printers and all kinds of stuff for years. I've never really seen it organizations take and run with it, but we're going to have the ability to import floor plans such that users can map and see, you know, how to get from place to place. But again, users will have to actually participate in it. There will also be an admin component too that will track and provide guidance on sentiment related to hybrid policies, so managers can implement best practices. And there will also be insights and guidance on space usage too. So you can, you know, understand how your space is being used. Are you over provisioned in spaces? You know, should you be looking at changing things up a little bit? And they are projecting that this will come out next year.
It's like the geographic version of my analytics.
Yeah, actually, just the ability to know where to go to a conference room. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
biggest challenges that drives me nuts in organizations is the we do it here too, right? I don't know what the name of this conference room is, but somebody might tell me to go to Galileo, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I guess I'll just go to the room that everybody else goes into, right?
Yeah.
But the organizations that have lots and lots and lots of silly conference room names, this will really simplify the process of getting your users to
Yeah.
those rooms, right? If they can just click, say the meeting is here, and they get a map to it, and they just go. I think that's a huge time saver by
We had,
itself.
like, sticky notes, we put white, there's like
Yeah.
Apollo, yeah, because it's we do Apollo, Galileo, something.
Hubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hubble, and then it's big conference room is another one.
Yeah,
And we have.
All right. So the Microsoft 365 space got a big shot in the arm. There's a lot of stuff coming there too. You might notice that there's nothing purple or very Perry on this page. We got some advances across the Windows space. The Windows 11 update, like I mentioned, did technically come out before Ignite. However, we are seeing more elements of the stack that are dependent on recent innovations in Windows 11. Also beginning to see where that means that support for these innovations in Windows 10 is becoming a follow-up development, right? So things are landing in 11 and then they're being backported to 10. So a prime example of this is the roadmap for the Windows 365 app, which was introduced in the Microsoft Store in Preview. Now, this is great. You can go out there and you can get it right now, but you do have to be running Windows 11 in order to be able to run this app. Right now, this app, once you download it, it actually brings all the features and capabilities of the Windows 365 web experience directly to the user in the app. So when they go and do things like, they want to click on the ellipsis and they want to restart, they want to restore, they can rename, all that stuff is now brought down to the desktop level where it previously did not exist at the desktop level. Mm-hmm. It does not in its current iteration though, and notice that it does say, it did say preview in the store. It doesn't integrate with a desktop switcher. It doesn't do boot to cloud PC. It doesn't support offline mode yet, but we do expect that those features are coming. Yeah, and that should be integrated into this application as time goes on. And those are at least a couple of them we know are going to be pretty much Windows 11 only, and that this app is going to then at some point in the future become bundled with Windows 11. Excuse me.
We were chugging water right before this started.
Yeah.
We were like, right before I did the intro, I was like, 1 second, and we both grabbed her.
All right, so my favorite thing about all the stuff that came out of Ignite, right? AI, great, yep, fantastic. All the stuff with Teams, fantastic. I am over the moon excited about Edge Workspaces. I'm a really big fan of anything that allows me to do real-time co-authoring. Right, so Loop is my jam.
Yeah.
But I also really love things that democratize the understanding of what work is. Right, when you come into a new organization or you spin up a new project, somebody has gone through the trouble of opening up a whole bunch of websites, and they're going to say, we're tracking this here, we're doing this here, we're doing that there, we're doing that there. Well, then how do you manage that at a team level? Traditionally, you might take all those links and email them, right? And so now you've got 1 million emails with 1 million links, and when those links change, you've got a new email with a new link or a new Teams message. Keeping track of that can be very, very intensive. And understanding where people are working with regard to those apps, you can't succeed. What we've seen people do in the past, and what I've advocated in the past, is take the tabs that you're working on and pin them as tabs in your Teams channel. And that's great. It works really well. But it doesn't move outside of Teams, and not all work is done inside of Teams. In fact, Microsoft has, I think, brought out the statistic that like 51% of all work is done in a browser right now, right?
Yeah.
So we need the work to follow us to a browser, and while Teams can run in the browser, I don't want to open a browser to open Teams to open a browser, right? So what we got is this ability to support what's called Edge Workspaces. And Edge Workspaces allow an organization, a user, a group, a manager, or whatever, to take a bunch of tabs that are currently open, right? So it's not even like a list of links or we have to keep updated. These are tabs that are open, and they can publish or assign these tabs out as a workspace. And then whenever people are in the workspace, you're actually going to see presence data for what actual tab they're in at any given moment. And then when you need to change what those tabs are, you just change them, right? So a manager can close one tab and open another, and everybody gets that new tab. And if so, if they
Okay.
switch from one active tab to the other, you see the little presence icons across the top there. Well, if somebody moves into the production schedule thing, you're going to see their little face move over to there too. So you can keep up with where your coworkers are working. And the great thing for me is that if the users are driving this and departments are driving this, and it's not IT pushing this as a GPO to open some tabs, it's not a change control process when it needs to get updated.
Oh.
Right. If I have to
That
push
is-
these out as a
yeah.
GPO and you need to change it, that's a change control process. That's going to go visit the change control board and
It's
we'll
gonna
talk
be
to you
a
in 6 weeks. Now you can put it back in the hands of the people who actually know what the work is and get things done much more quickly. Critically, this is going to share the workspace browsers tabs and history with your team in real time. The active tab for each group member that has the workspace open, so you'll be able to see that. And you can actually have multiple workspaces as well. What it will not show is user logins, personal browser settings, tabs that or data from outside the workspace. So even in the same view here, I can have a tab that is not associated with this workspace. I'm not at risk of that junk content going back in. And if a user from within one of these tabs browses to like their personal Gmail, you're not going to be able to track that, and they will not, it won't show a device screen, right? So
Yeah.
this is intended to be secure by default, private by default, but also immediate by default. So fantastic. And then I don't have a pretty slide for this, but Microsoft also announced that Windows Server 2022 will support running Windows or Microsoft 365 apps. We tend to lean heavily on Microsoft VDI from a cloud first perspective, and we tend to think about things from an Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 perspective, but there are a lot of organizations that don't, and being able to actually set up those VDI environments such that users can leverage Windows Server 2022 and use the Microsoft 365 apps, that's going to really move people down the road, and I'm pretty excited about that. Okay. Woo! Now we're going to jump into the management platforms, right? Because Microsoft did some fantastic unification around these platforms, and we have covered this year. We've done a lot around Entra. We've done a lot around Purview. We did a whole series of Intune stuff last year and the year before.
Like every aspect, endpoint management.
Yeah, we've done all this kind of fun stuff. So we got some great announcements around here, but we're going to start with the bottom. We're going to work our way around the circle. So the first thing and the most exciting thing in my entire world is that Intune is now the flagship configuration management product in the Microsoft suite. It's the flagship. It's the flagship. It's the big one. It's not SCCM anymore. It's Intune. And critically, it's Intune. It's not Endpoint Manager. That name is retired.
I'm so I was literally building out a marketing campaign on Endpoint Manager the other night. I was like, no.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I've been an Intune admin since its earliest days in the Silverlight portal, right? And man, if you were going to talk about a candidate for rename, I would have figured that would have gone away a long time ago. But Intune itself is not just the flagship product; it is now also the flagship suite. So Intune itself is growing from being just you only get one version of it. It's the P1 version and that's it. There's now going to be also an Intune, an additional Intune plan. I expect it will be P2. It's going to have support for premium add-ons, right? And if you've looked in your tenant, if you have a first run tenant, you might have noticed premium add-ons in the tenant admin side. This is where we expect to see things being added into the P2 offering or whatever it's going to be called. I have seen documentation that says that the P2 offering, once it is built, will contain all of the components of the P2 offering. I don't know if that documentation is still true, but what we do expect to see land in here, in addition to remote help, is a whole bunch of stuff, including privilege management, which is going to enable users without local admin on the device to request access to local admin for long enough to install something. And then that will kick off an approval process that will enable an administrator to say, yeah, go ahead, install that. That's fine. Or yeah, I don't think so. You're not installing that. Right. So that's going to close a big loop for a lot of folks in terms of restricting admin rights. And we've actually been hearing a lot of clamor for that support of endpoint privilege management for quite some time. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. We also saw the introduction of organizational messages, and Microsoft put this in their Windows 11 conversation at Ignite, and I'm actually pulling it out and I'm putting it into Intune because while it does impact users and it only supports Windows 11, all of the work is done in Intune. And this is pretty exciting for me. So organizational messages, when it was first announced, looked a lot like, and this we've heard about this for a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of uproar because many
Mhm.
of us remember the dreaded Windows Messenger, where attackers could very easily and with no interference at all put messages up on your screen, and all you had to do was just like, please let there be an update that disables this.
Yeah.
Right, so that was right target for attacks, and this is a lot more nuanced though. It's going to give us the ability to put critical, time-sensitive notifications in front of users faster than they might see them in an email or even in a Teams message, and even in the avenues where they might not be looking at email or Teams messages, right? A lot of times our users are just in their core work apps and they're not even looking for messages. So we're going to have multilingual support, branding, scheduling, group assignment, and status tracking of user engagement. So this is a much more powerful tool than what we have ever had before. And I love the fact that we can actually gather the user engagement back and do something like, like you see here on this thing, there's a critical update that's available, right? We need you to do this right now. If the user defers, we're going to get a notification that said the user deferred. Okay, now here's something that was announced at Ignite and has already gone live. We now have the ability to support authentication strength as a condition in determining the results of a conditional access policy.
I missed this one.
I was excited about this. This came out yesterday morning, and I was super jazzed. So we've always had, we've had the ability for some time to use is MFA, or require MFA as a conditional access component.
Yeah.
And Microsoft's telemetry says that 35% of all CA policies are saying require MFA. That's great. It's a good start. But not all MFA is created equal, right? An SMS message to a phone is not going to be at the same level of something that's more phishing resistant.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, none of my the biometrics for me ever work. I'm guilty of using the phone.
Well, then you fail with the new CA authentication strength component.
Great.
So authentication strength is going to enable us to drive toward the White House requirement that came out, or I guess it was the OMB requirement that came out to mandate minimum strengths for authentication. But what's interesting here too is that if you have a scenario where users are like, you're not putting an app on my phone unless you buy me the phone, right? Which we hear pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Well, we can actually say, okay, I'm going to allow you read-only access into this application if you're coming in with an SMS response to a text. But if you come in with a FIDO2 or Windows Hello, something like that with a more phish-resistant solution, then I'm going to actually let you in with read-write access. I'm going to let you do things that I would allow, based on a higher degree of trust of that authentication. And what's super cool is it's going to work across tenant boundaries. So I can say that Christina, my consultant, can't get into my, critical apps with her low quality SMS authentication, right?
SMS should never, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
but that for me,
it's true,
like,
yeah.
that one statement that we're going to be able to do this across tenant boundaries was like, yep, absolutely, I'm ready. Sign me up. We also got a lot of announcements, and these were actually kind of Ignite adjacent. So this was discussed at Ignite a little bit, but there were some Twitter spaces that happened at the same time that talked about support for my brain is shutting down. For workload identities to have the same security capabilities as human identities. So service accounts, device accounts, applications, managed service, all that kind of fun stuff. We have had the ability in Preview for a while to do them in condition or to add them to conditional access policies. But now we're also going to have identity protection capabilities and identity governance capabilities too. So all of that is coming into play, and we expect to see that GA by the end of the year. Moving out of the identity and management side, moving into the security side, there were a lot of announcements around defenders. The Defender for Cloud product has grown to have two new stepchildren, and they are Defender for DevOps and Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management. Yeah. I don't have a lot of DevOps in my space, but there's going to be a whole lot of capabilities coming in on that side of things. But what I thought was really interesting for the security posture management is it's going to include vulnerability scanning of software, CVEs, disk snapshots, and EDR.
Oh,
Integrated insights across DevOps. Defender for, I almost said it wrong. Defender external attack surface management is actually going to be reported into this. Intra permissions management and multi-cloud environments, contextual security and risk prioritization, much like we have with SecureScore and all the other gamifications that exist in the security space, and integrated workflows and remediation. So much like the rest of the Defender suite, we're going to have not just the ability to detect a thing, but also take action on the thing. And then as an aside, last month, Defender for Cloud became the sole licensing vehicle for Defender for Endpoint for servers. And that's why I was excited about seeing the EDR added here as vulnerability scanning under Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management, right?
I'm gonna come up with an acronym for that.
Yeah, they actually are calling it CSPM, right? And that's yeah, but keep track of that for a week and they'll change the name.
Yeah.
But okay, so this is important, right? So Defender for Endpoint for servers, you cannot buy as a standalone licensing going forward. You have to license it through Defender for Cloud, which people kind of threw their hands up in the air and said, well, great, except it was really, really, really confusing and really complicated to land the story of how this is supposed to work and how it's supposed to fit together. So this is actually good news, and we're getting some additional controls that will help us make more meaningful insights and take more meaningful actions based on what's detected. Defender for Endpoint, since we're talking about it, now also has the ability to do C2 interruptions or command and control interruptions. We're able to now actually detect attacks in real time or near real time and start to take actions on them while the attacks are still unfolding. And that's going to include things like automatic device isolation and automatic account suspension for users. We've had the ability to have users go up in risk and have them, force them to change their password and whatnot, but we haven't actually had suspension built in place too.
Yeah.
So we're getting more powerful tools to detect and automatically disrupt attacks in real time. We also got the announcement that there is going to be a 50% reduction on Defender for Endpoint. There's a whole bunch of Q&A right down there at the bottom, and this is all public data, so I'm not revealing anything Microsoft doesn't want you to know. But if you are if you want to try it, right, this offer goes through June. There is it says set reminder because this deal goes live on November 1. But there's a lot of great Q&A in here. It is not available for Defender for Business. Fortunately, that's kind of the one. Yeah, and that's I called that out, right? So don't have
they created this just because, to your point, you were just like they really struggled to sell.
But public cloud is eligible, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. GCC and GCC high. Anyway, all right. So lots of stuff on the Defender side. You'll notice I skipped over Sentinel. There was some stuff there, but we only have an hour, right? So the last area that I really want to dig into is Purview. And
His
oh my
favorite thing
dear
on the
sweet
planet.
Lord, they could have had a whole Ignite for the Purview team.
Well, no, I'm not surprised at all.
It was insane. I mean, PowerPoint won't hold enough slides to tell you all the things that came out in Purview.
Okay, so in November, y'all want to join a Microsoft?
Oh, no, we're not. No, actually, I've got something specific I want to do for November. So, shh, all right.
I gotta build it.
Yeah, don't tell her. We're just going to surprise her. We're just going to sit her down and be like, hey, we're doing a thing. All right. So Purview information protection, right? Used to be Microsoft information protection. Now it's Purview information protection. Got a lot of key capabilities and additions around protection of PDFs, including when you take a document that already has a given sensitivity label and you export it to PDF, the sensitivity label should come with that, right? You shouldn't have it just being a dumped file, then you got to go re-encrypt it. Well, they've identified that gap and they've built it into it. So now document export comes with it. We have new out-of-the-box trainable classifiers, which I think we talked about at a previous event, but I'm not sure if we talked about it publicly. Credential sensitive information types. I mean, there's just so much around the information protection side. DLP got a massive shot in the arm with demonstrating contextual evidence for policy matches. We used to see, this DLP policy match for a thing, right? And then we have to go in and find the file. Well, now we don't have to go in and find the file. It's going to show us right here. This is why I said this was a policy match, right? So we'll really hopefully be able to cut down on a lot of false positives with policy matching, and I'm really jazzed about that. We also got the ability in DLP to define different sensitivity restrictions across device classes, device exclusions and inclusions. So like maybe I want to allow different device, different removable device types to be able to hold data, or different network shares to be classified differently.
Mhm.
Maybe I want to have even SharePoint sites be accessible to my users at different levels, right? Or printers.
Universal print and Purview, I swear, if you it's like
How do you stop somebody from accidentally printing to a device that they have access to print to, right?
I mean,
This is it.
there's a reason they have access to that.
Yeah,
I guess,
but you
never
don't
mind.
want- you
I'm
don't
gonna
want
shoot myself in the
executive-
foot. I'm not gonna argue with the security. Never mind. I'm gonna
You
shoot
don't
myself
want
in
the
foot. I'm not
executive
gonna go there.
compensation payroll document to be printed on the lobby printer. Just because the executive has access to the lobby printer, you don't want them to accidentally do that.
Sure.
So now we can actually say these printers must match the sensitivity label of the
Mhm.
document that's coming, right? And that's a Purview functionality. It's not yet a universal print functionality, and I'm waiting to see how those things are going to align. I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, there was actually so much more in Purview. Like I said, they could have done an entire Ignite around this. There was massive introductions in insider risk management. I literally could probably put up about 30 slides around the
I know
improvements in
you
insider
told-
risk.
We had like 4 hours.
There was a lot,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn it back over now for us to do a little bit of Q&A because we actually have exhausted 51
I was
minutes.
gonna say, do you want to breathe now?
Might take a sip of water
I
while
was
you read a
gonna say,
question.
I was just, oh, I hope everyone else on this webinar has had some coffee like we had, because that was just, I can't even imagine, that was a lot. Oh, so Intune, how is it being referred to? Is it Intune Suite, Microsoft Intune, Intune, like, is it just because if you say Intune, everyone, like,
Oh,
no one
okay.
associates Intune as like that umbrella of,
Well, we used to.
well,
Yeah, we used to.
Mhm.
Anyway, no, so Endpoint Manager, the name is officially retired. The name of the product, the flagship product, and the flagship suite is now Microsoft Intune. However, I did see references to a Microsoft Advanced Management Suite that's going to come out in early next year. And I'm hoping that that's just the description of the service and not another name that's going to get slipped into it.
yeah, every day. Keep me on my toes. Oh, so Microsoft Places, how can it allow employees to manage their time and maximize in-person connection? Like I could see it. It's almost like the Microsoft version of Sims. Like people just, you can.
Yeah,
they're
a
like,
little
"Oh,
bit.
they're cooler."
So
Well,
one of the things that we were told about a while ago was that Teams was going to introduce the ability to respond to a meeting with, I'm going to be there in person, or I'm going to be there virtually, or I'm not going to be there.
mhm.
Right? So this is a little bit building on that, but it's actually saying it's not just for this particular meeting, it's for this whole day.
Mhm.
I will be available, but I will be available virtually, right?
Mhm.
I plan to be traveling for this amount of time. And actually what's really cool too is that it will show you how much of your day you will get back by choosing to be
Yeah,
virtual.
is
So,
the-
watch out, managers. But I mean, again, it's only going to be as useful as the data that's put into it. So if users are unwilling to engage with it, you won't know where they're going to be. It will not draw meaningful insights into where users are. It does look like it's going to have the ability to import policy. So you your manager may be able to say, you are required to do 3 days a week in the office, but then allow you to choose what those days are. So there will be ways to drive engagement, it seems, but this is still very early and we only have a few limited sneak shots to look at.
Sure. So we talked about some of the new features in Microsoft Premium that don't currently exist in Teams and stuff like the translation and things like that. Which one do you think is the biggest one and that makes it like, what's the big feature that you think companies should be excited about?
The meeting summarization, pulling out from the automatic captioning, what were the key moments of the meeting, capturing assignments of content and being able to deliver that back to the users in their native languages.
It's like the auto version of the chapters that we write for.
Yeah.
Or something. Okay.
Yeah. And actually you can do that in YouTube. There are automatic chapters, but it's not great. I love you, YouTube.
I love YouTube. So do you expect, and so we talked about, I know like we had our own opinions about metaverse and mesh, but do you expect people to start using that for remote work?
Microsoft has said that, what is it like? It's over 50%. It might have even been like 60% of millennials and Gen Z expect that they will be working in the metaverse in the next couple of years. What I have seen is that there are some people who will benefit very directly in terms of their willingness to participate on camera. There are some concerns from folks around what it will mean for lip readers. There are a lot of concerns back and forth about, what all is going to be there. And my primary concern right now is that the Facebook metaverse is going to get legs, and Microsoft does not yet seem that they're bringing legs. I can't tell. The AI digital assistant in digital twins did have legs, so maybe we pick a lane and we stay in that lane.
Yeah.
I want legs.
So for Edge, and actually I'm amazed at how far Edge has gone in the last couple of years, because it used to just be like, I always felt guilty downloading Gmail onto a PC because I was like, I loved Edge, but so what do you think is the biggest worker benefit for Spaces and Edge?
Workspaces. Again, the ability to have work defined and managed within the department rather than it having to go and become an IT challenge. I've talked in the past about the benefits of the Microsoft Company Portal app and being able to make applications available for users to self-service install in their own machines. Right? When you deliver apps that way, you don't even need to worry about admin credentials because it's available from the administrator. So it bypasses that whole process. Self-service password resets, right? The ability to create and manage your own teams in Teams, right? So all of these things that put the ownership of the workload back into the people who are doing the work and let me get back to just defining a secure environment in which to do the work. That's beautiful. That's the synergy that we want, right? Between the workforce and IT.
Okay, and then I'm not sure. So using Copilot to translate, I think this is around the metaverse conversation. I'm not never mind. I'll follow up with you on this one. Or we will email you.
Okay.
But I think will the management URL for Intune change?
Endpoint.microsoft.com is currently the management URL, and I have been waiting to see if it would change. In fact, it still says Endpoint Manager in Intune. So what usually happens with these Ignite announcements is that the announcements are made, the blogs are published, the official documentation catches up, and then the actual then the dashboards catch up too. So I would expect to see it still being called Endpoint Manager in place for a few more weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Please feel free to drop them in and I will go through my usual annual spiel. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. You will receive a follow-up to this with the recording, and I'm going to absolutely, because this, I can't even, is a lot of content, and kudos to you, Adrian, as always, because I cannot believe you actually got all that in an hour, and it literally, the number of times you were like, okay, like next thing. But please, in the future, be sure to keep up with us on social media, and I know we were joking about YouTube, but please follow our YouTube channel because there's so much amazing content around. Like I dropped Jeff's webinar in the chat already. There's all of the security content that we talked about, the endpoint compliance, all of that is there. And check our events page for upcoming webinars. I know November apparently is a secret.
It might just be me eating turkey. You don't know.
I'm getting married. I'm falling off the face of the earth. And yes, if you have any questions around today, even if you don't drop it in the chat and you kind of think of one later after watching the recording, Adrian's email was on the screen at one point, but you'll also get an email from me. And please reach out and we will connect you with the appropriate AE. And with 2 minutes to spare, we did it.